Hello and welcome to Monday BJJ with me, your host, Brian. Today we are going to talk about the fundamentals of Jiu-Jitsu. This topic can be very tricky because there are some differences in how people define what is fundamental to the sport. I'm going to define it as I think and understand it so far. You can like the video and subscribe to my channel if you get some good information out of what I say. And if you disagree with me or have additional things that you think are fundamental to sport, please let me know in the comments and we can have a discussion about what it means to focus on the fundamentals. The way I understand Jiu-Jitsu at its most broad level are the concepts and the techniques. They aren't separate things, but rather one thing. I think of the techniques as a specific body of positions and motions you must be able to execute to perform the sport. The concepts gives the objectives of the position or technique. This means that if you deeply understand a concept, you can intuit some of the nuances of a given position or technique that someone might have to be taught specifically. The opposite side of the coin is if someone is taught the very specific intricacies of a technique, that person might be able to intuit the general concept or strategy behind the technique. In this way, I see the two as a Venn diagram, and the place they overlap is your understanding. As you understand more about how they work together, the two circles come more and more into alignment. So that's a really high-level view. Now we can begin to dig down into more concrete things. My mind breaks down techniques into three parts: base, posture, positions, and transitions. Maybe that's 4 parts. Base and posture function as the groundwork, pun intended, for all other techniques. They are the fundamentals fundamental. With this category, we are also thinking about balance and strength. A lot of people want to think about that martial arts are secret magic that makes size and strength not matter. But the discussion of late has been far more open to acknowledging that size and strength do play a role in the application of technique. Ramsey Dewey and Zach Tellender did a great discussion of this called the triad of performance as a triangle of specificity or technique, physiology, strength, endurance, weight, and psychology, mindset, and concepts. An athlete needs all 3 of these things to perform. A lack in one area can be made up for with a gain in another, but they aren't necessarily a one-to-one. So your ability to maintain good posture and have balance helps prevent moves from being executed on you. And likewise, your ability to affect your opponent's base and posture helps you execute moves on them. From there, we move through the variety of positions in BJJ grappling. Each position has its own specific base, posture, and depending on whether you prefer to play a crushing pressure game or a more light, quick change positions type of game, they can also look very different. Again, the concept affects the technique in this way. The basic positions are standing, open guard, which I am including all of the fractional and miscellaneous lapel guards people play, and I think leg attack positions fit in here nicely as well. Closed guard, side control, knee on belly, mount, and back control. These positions each represent the increasing control and striking potential of the dominant or top player in the position. The bottom player, by contrast, has less potential for striking and control. This leads naturally into our next set of fundamental techniques, transitions. I am using this as a broad term to encompass takedowns, sweeps, passes, advances. Takedowns are how we get from standing to the ground. These include throws, trips, shots, and in a weird way, guard pulls. All these motions transition the fight from 2 people standing to either 1 person standing and 1 on the ground, or both people on the ground. Once the grappling has been initiated, the transitions primarily take the forms of sweeps, reversals for the defensive or bottom player, and passes and advances for the top or dominant player. These often forgotten transition is the escape that returns the players to a more neutral position. So now that we have some of the working knowledge of how the techniques are structured, let's look at the concepts and strategies linked together. The first concept that everyone runs into is position before submission. You are probably the most vulnerable to losing your position when you stop focusing on your position and start thinking about the execution of a submission. In other sports, this is similar to shooting a goal. You are temporarily giving up your control of the ball to try and score. If you miss, the other team defends, you lose the ball or puck. In Jiu-Jitsu, you may get swept, reversed, or allow the opponent to escape, and thus you lose your dominant position. I've heard that a better way to understand this concept is control your opponent before you go for a submission. If you properly capture the joint or neck, your opponent must make more adjustments to avoid submission, and you will have better control of the position. This requires knowledge of the position and the submission and how the controls of each feed into one another. The second concept is building frames. This is a simple idea that by aligning your bones, you can support a weight and your muscles can do other things. Bones don't get tired like muscles do. If you try to hold a push-up with your arms bent, it's much harder than if your arms are aligned with your elbows and your shoulders and they carry the weight in your chest. If you're on bottom, getting your arms and legs between us and our opponents can let our bones take the weight rather than our stomachs. Other good concepts is don't move your opponent, move yourself. This is a pretty nuanced maxim because there are, of course, times when you need to move your opponent, but the idea is that generally your opponent is resisting your attempts to move them, so it becomes easier to move yourself around them. This is especially helpful when you are facing a larger opponent. Sometimes by moving yourself, you gain the momentum or angle you need to then be able to move your opponent. This leads to the third concept of points of leverage. Part of making the necessary adjustments to a technique that isn't working 100% is looking for places where grips and positioning could be improved. Find the mechanical advantages in the position you are in and use them to make things go easier. These three concepts can be summarized with more general concept of make the technique work for you. Going back to some of the earlier ideas about size and strength, there are some techniques that a person can muscle through, as it were. When we practice, we try and do the move as effortlessly as possible. The easier the move is, the more we can know that we are building the right frames, moving ourselves into the right positions, and finding the points of leverage we need to be using. So if you want a more in-depth discussion of the fundamentals, you can also look at Lex Friedman and Matt Hall doing a podcast where they talk about solving jiu-jitsu and martial arts from first principles. I made this video after that one came out, so their discussion's pretty advanced, and I didn't take most of the things I learned from that video and incorporate them into my video. So there you have it, my take on the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. Like the video, and if you felt like it earned it, and subscribe if you felt like it earned it. Did I miss your favorite concept or training maxim? Do you think that techniques should be broken down differently? Is my entire idea of techniques and concepts flawed from the beginning? Let me know what you thought in the comments. Thanks for watching.